I'm J.R. Church. Welcome to today's webcast. It's Friday. Gary Stearman is with me today. And I have an email here that says, "Hi, J.R., just love your programs," and Gary's also, of course, and follow them on my computer. I want you to know I'm praying for you each day that the Lord will heal you and completely eradicate the cancer so it can never return again. I appreciate that. I love you guys. I want you to know I feel your prayers. I know that the Lord is working in my life and in my body. I have no pain in my my liver. I have no pain in my liver. And I suppose that's a result of all of the things that we're doing to fight the cancer. So just keep praying for me, okay? Also, these guys sent along a little note about the disappearance of bees. Gary, tell us about it.
The disappearance of bees. Now, at first, JR, this would not seem to be much of a problem. Who cares about bees anyway? They sting you. If I don't ever see another bee, it'll be just fine with me. Friends, you don't understand. Bees are the number one crop pollinator in the world. Without honeybees, there's no wide array of fruits and vegetables and nuts and all those crops that require cross-pollination. Here's the story. The world may be on the brink of biological disaster after news that a third of the U.S. bee colonies did not survive the winter of 2009. Disturbing evidence that honeybees are in terminal decline has emerged from the United States, where for the fourth year in a row, more than a third of the colonies have failed to survive the winter. The decline of the country's estimated 2.4 million beehives began in 2006 when a phenomenon dubbed colony collapse disorder, that they call it CCD for short, led to the disappearance of hundreds of thousands of colonies. And since then, more than 3 million colonies in the United States and billions of honeybees worldwide have died. Scientists are no nearer to knowing what is causing the catastrophic fall in the numbers of the honeybees. JR, we talk about disasters, we talk about floods, windstorms, we talk about great sweeping fires and earthquakes, but let me tell you, honeybee disappearance is a disaster equal to all of those.
Absolutely. Is it God's judgment upon this world? Have we reached that place in history where God is about to bring down the day of his wrath? He has cursed the land. He has judged the land. We have earthquakes. We have the fires ravaging vegetation. We have problems with flooding and the oil spill in the Gulf. That's God's judgment upon the waters. We have God's judgment upon the air through the tornadoes, the high winds, and the volcanoes that are spewing. And it's just beginning, Gary. God, like a lady said the other day, I think God is mad at us. Well,
you know, if we're in that transitional period, and I've been writing about this in Prophecy in the News, and my contention is that we are in a transitional period that is leading up to the Great Tribulation. The Bible has lots to say about that period, and it says that the natural systems of stability will begin to decline, or will begin to shift, so that more and more disasters will befall man. And this is prior to the tribulation, JR. Those disasters can be animal, vegetable, mineral. Jesus himself called for great earthquakes in diverse places, and I believe maybe we're seeing the beginning of those. So we're in, I believe, a biblical transition period.
I'm looking forward to that. Normally, I guess, as a human being, I should say, "Oh dear, that's going to upset everybody." But I tell you, I've had so many people say, "I'm ready for the rapture. I'm ready for the Lord to come."
Oh yeah.
And so we all are, I'm sure. Gary, these natural disasters that are coming are said to be the worst that there ever was.
Yeah.
They're in a category above anything in history.
Some of the floods, for example, the flood of the Cumberland River last couple of weeks over in Tennessee. as far as human memory. No one can remember such a flood
Yes.
happening in that area. We're seeing these first time, sometimes they're called 100-year floods, sometimes they're called 500-year floods. As far as I'm concerned, those are very, very strange events.
Yes. So, since we're suffering all of these natural disasters, it would seem to me that people should be getting on their knees and praying. That's what they used to do, 100 years ago.
Oh, yes.
When a natural disaster came along, a flood, a famine, whatever, that they would pray. They would call for national days of prayer.
Absolutely. We've had a number of chief executives in the White House in the history of the United States who absolutely called for prayer. Abraham Lincoln, many other presidents have called for days of fasting and prayer. We don't do that anymore, to our great regret, I think.
Yeah, well, throughout this century, throughout the 20th century, it seems that the powers that be kick God out of the classroom, kick prayer and Bible reading out of the schools. Our children are being taught relativism. They're not being taught the Ten Commandments. They don't have any absolutes. They don't have any foundation. They don't believe in God. I'm talking generally speaking, okay? And then there are the Christians in the churches. They don't seem to be much better. They're living like the world.
They are.
And so we have this Laodicean age we're living in. And boy, I tell you, God's judgment is coming fast.
Well, JR, I think we're being asked as Christians to observe all these things. In fact, that's why JR and I bring you these news items, so that your consciousness will be raised and you'll know what to pray about. This would be a biological disaster of the first order. If the honeybees disappeared, you won't find almonds on the shelf anymore. Those sunsweet prunes that you buy, no more. Those wonderful plums and pears and apples and some of the field crops like sweet peas. All of those things would begin to disappear from grocery store shelves. And then you'd say, why aren't they there anymore? Well, you heard it here first. It's called colony collapse disorder. I think the Lord's trying to get our attention.
Matthew 24, famine.
Famine.
That's the secret. And I believe God is looking down on us with great anticipation of bringing His judgment upon an unbelieving world. And I want you to know, for those of you who know Jesus Christ as Savior, we're looking to the blessed hope. Because we know that in one of these days, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, we'll be out of here. And we'll be enjoying the pleasures and marvels of heaven while God pours out His judgment upon a wicked world.
Well, we would remind you to pray. Pray for JR. He does appreciate your prayers. I know that for sure. Pray for this nation, for the stability of this nation in the days remaining. Pray for our food supply. Pray for the stability of the land. We're on the verge of great earthquakes. Pray that God's people will be a blessing in these closing days of this generation, will be a blessing to this world. It would be a good thing to remember that every day when you bow before the Lord.
That's right. Well, I want you to have a great weekend. We look forward to seeing you again Monday with our analysis of the news.